China was the ghost at the US India feast. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi basked in the most lavish honors that the US can bestow on a visiting leader. But for much of his state visit, the specter of an uninvited guest hovered over Washington and the future of US-India relations. China, and the growing belief that the US is on a collision course with the Asian power, is driving the relationship between Washington and India. That helps explain why President Joe Biden and Congress faded Modi despite the fact that his populist Hindu nationalist government has presided over a significant erosion in human, political, press and religious freedoms in a way that appears to violate the US leaders' push for global democracy.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Religious freedoms in a way that appears to violate the US leaders' push for global democracy. Biden made clear that he sees India as vital to helping preserve the Western-led global international order, a set of rules-based principles and values that China is seeking to challenge. But despite Thursday's pageantry, there are deep questions over whether the Modi government, while seeking to leverage its warming ties with Washington to its own advantage, sees itself in quite the same role as a linchpin of US diplomatic strategy. It remains unclear, for instance, whether India would throw its full weight behind Biden in the event that any of the increasingly alarming US-China confrontations escalates into a full-scale military or diplomatic standoff. The backdrop of Modi's visit, a feud over a Chinese spy balloon's trip across US skies earlier this year, which was just reignited by Biden publicly branding Chinese leader Xi Jinping as a dictator, showed just why India's growing strategic weight could be so valuable to the US. The president denied on Thursday that his comments, in the relaxed atmosphere of a Democratic Party fundraiser this week, had sunk his effort to rescue disastrously poor US-China relations. He said he had no plans to stop calling things as he sees them.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Fundraiser this week, had sunk his effort to rescue disastrously poor US-China relations. He said he had no plans to stop calling things as he sees them. He also drew a contrast between Washington's ties with Beijing and those with India. One of the fundamental reasons that I believe the US-China relationship is not in the space as with the US-Indian relationship is that there is an overwhelming respect for each other because we're both democracies, Biden said. Biden's decision to grant one of his term's rare state visits to Modi represented a doubling down of a strategy to draw India into the Western orbit, which was initiated as far back as the Clinton administration and was accelerated by Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. Like most of his predecessors, he pointed to political synergy in the governing systems in India and the United States, both once under British colonial rule. Biden's embrace of Modi also put him in the odd position of drawing praise from some Republicans who are committed to an even more robust policy toward China and often accuse him of being soft on Beijing. He effectively offered Modi cover in a news conference in which the US side persuaded the Indian Prime Minister to take the unusual step of taking questions. We believe the dignity of every citizen, and it is in America's DNA, and I believe in India's DNA that the whole world has a stake in our success, both of us, and maintaining our democracies, Biden said. This makes us appealing partners and enables us to expand democratic institutions around the world. Modi, meanwhile, offered exactly the kind of words that his American hosts wanted to hear, describing US-India relations as more important than ever before and saying that they could together be successful in enhancing the strengths of the whole world. Did Biden infringe his values to recruit a new member to the anti-China front? Biden's embrace of Modi exposed him to criticism that he trampled his own calls for the preservation of global democracy, human rights, and press freedom, given the democratic backsliding in India. In order to advance these values with credibility on the world stage, we must apply them equally to friend and foe alike, just as we work to apply these same principles here in the United States, a group of 70 Democratic lawmakers wrote to the president regarding Modi's visit. Biden faced the same kind of criticism when he traveled to Saudi Arabia last year and fist-bumped Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman after vowing on the 2020 campaign trail that he would make the kingdom a pariah over the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Biden's wider goal is the preservation of the international liberal order that is under assault from China and Russia. This may insulate him from criticisms that erupt whenever an American president sets a moral grounding for U.S. foreign policy and then inevitably faces criticism that he's prioritizing grubby geopolitical interests over core American values. Obama addressed this very conundrum in an exclusive interview with 24newsread.blogspot.com broadcast on Thursday. "Look, it's complicated," Obama told Christiane Amanpour. "The President of the United States has a lot of equities. And when I was president, I would deal with figures in some cases who were allies, who, if you pressed me in private, do they run their governments and their political parties in ways that I would say are ideally democratic? I'd have to say no." The China factor. Modi visited Washington at a time when there is an almost universal belief across both parties that China's rise poses a dangerous challenge to U.S. power, influence and the entire Western-led system of economic and political rules. This is taking priority over concerns about democracy in India, which are becoming increasingly acute. In March, for instance, the main opposition leader Rahul Gandhi was thrown out of parliament after he was convicted in a defamation case centering on Modi's name that critics said was politically motivated. There have also been raids on foreign and local media outlets and increased faith-based oppression. U.S. officials insisted this week that the Modi visit was not about China. But in a way in Washington, these days, everything is about China. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican who has often spoken about the need to fight autocracy abroad, summed up the mood surrounding Modi's visit in a statement. "Our nation's economic and security interests overlap on many of the most pressing issues, especially the growing hostility of the Chinese Communist Party in the Himalayas and in the Indian Ocean," the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee said. From Washington's perspective, India appears a promising partner in its effort to counter China, which has seen the Biden administration strengthen the defense component of alliances with Japan and Australia and re-engage the Philippines in an initiative that will lead to more U.S. troops being stationed on the soil of a longtime ally that sometimes flirts with China. India's economy is benefiting from Western governments' desire to wean themselves off Chinese supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic and a spike in inflation underscored how painful over-reliance on a manufacturing base vulnerable to political confrontation could be. Tensions and exchanges of fire across China's long border with India have, meanwhile, raised the question of whether New Delhi's most dangerous foe is Beijing rather than Pakistan. India has also become a participating member of the Quad Security Forum that also involves the leaders of Australia, Japan, and the US and met recently in Japan. Will India deliver after lavish US attention? In his address to a joint session of Congress on Thursday, Modi moved toward the US position and was clearly referencing Beijing's expansive sovereignty claims in the region that are not recognized by international law. He said India shared the U.S. vision of a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific marked by freedom of navigation defined by international law and was against the domination of any one nation. Even in the cloaked language of international diplomacy, those comments represented a significant statement of alignment with the U.S. position and a message to China. Yet the world often behaves very differently than policymakers in Washington expect. While there was much talk of Biden supposedly compromising his principles on democracy, there was less attention this week on what kind of payoff the U.S. can expect for an intense engagement with India. Could New Delhi, for instance, simply rack up significant wins while pursuing its own path? One of the most significant deliverables from this summit, for instance, was a deal that will see General Electric partner with an Indian firm to build jet fighter engines after years of relying on Russian and Soviet weaponry. The agreement sent a message to both Beijing and Moscow, America's primary adversaries. No one in Washington expects India to become a formal U.S. ally. It has always resisted being drawn into organized alliances and is now positioning itself as the leader of the developing world. Its policies also sometimes conflict with those of the US. It has been an eager customer, for example, of cheap oil from Russia despite sanctions over Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. And it is unlikely that despite closer defense ties India would line up alongside the United States in a military confrontation with China over Taiwan or in the South China Sea. Ashley Tellis, one of the architects of a civil nuclear energy cooperation deal with India in the Bush administration, which was a platform for years of subsequent engagement with New Delhi, warned last month that the US was making a bad bet with Modi. India's significant weaknesses compared with China, and its inescapable proximity to it, guarantee that New Delhi will never involve itself in any US confrontation with Beijing that does not directly threaten its own security, Tellis wrote in Foreign Affairs. India values cooperation with Washington for the tangible benefits it brings but does not believe that it must, in turn, materially support the United States in any crisis, even one involving a common threat such as China. Such a view reinforces the idea that India and the US may have different ambitions and visions for their ever-tightening relationship, and the possibility that Biden could end up being disappointed in the returns for his attention on Modi. But at a time when every foreign policy question eventually comes down to a broader confrontation with China, even incremental gains from this visit could benefit the US. One of the architects of a civil nuclear energy cooperation deal with India in the Bush administration, which was a platform for years of subsequent engagement with New Delhi, warned last month that the US was making a bad bet with Modi. India's significant weaknesses compared with China, and its inescapable proximity to it, guarantee that New Delhi will never involve itself in any US confrontation with Beijing that does not directly threaten its own security, Tellis wrote in Foreign Affairs. India values cooperation with Washington for the tangible benefits it brings but does not believe that it must, in turn, materially support the United States in any crisis, even one involving a common threat such as China. Such a view reinforces the idea that India and the US may have different ambitions and visions for their ever-tightening relationship, and the possibility that Biden could end up being disappointed in the returns for his attention on Modi. But at a time when every foreign policy question eventually comes down to a broader confrontation with China, even incremental gains from this visit could benefit the US. The question eventually comes down to a broader confrontation with China, even incremental gains from this visit could benefit the US.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Modi-Biden connect and India-US ties soar on trust. The ongoing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit to US and the joint statement released in Washington today show that the Indian leader has been able to connect with his US counterpart President Joe Biden, with the bilateral ties charting new domains of engagement. At the state dinner this evening in Washington, the band played "Ae Mere Watan Ke Logo," a song penned by Kavi Pradeep and sung by PM Modi's favorite singer late Lata Mangeshkar, with President Joe Biden going out of the way to lay the red carpet for his Indian guest.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
And Joe Biden going out of the way to lay the red carpet for his Indian guest. Fact is that it was not only the Democrats but also the Republicans who found in PM Modi a leader to be relied upon, as was clearly evident during his speech to the US Congress, with Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a Republican, as enthusiastic over the Indian leader as Vice President and Indian origin Kamala Harris. PM Modi on his part reached out to both Democrats and Republicans, as India needs both parties to ensure that technology transfer is not impeded by US legislation. With India being the fifth largest economy and having a strong leader at the helm of affairs, the US Congress clearly sees India under Modi as a country with which the US can do business with. And this has already been translated on the ground, with Micron, AMP, Google, and LAN Technologies moving towards India, with Tesla moving towards making a final call of manufacturing the iconic car in India. After talking to the principals who are invested heavily in India-US ties in Washington and New Delhi, it is quite evident to HT that a new era has dawned on the relationship between the two largest democracies in the world. And this could not have happened unless PM Modi and President Joe Biden have trust and faith in each other, and the hesitations of the past century have been deleted from the bilateral ties. The novel initiative on critical and emerging technologies and the cooperation in
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
And faith in each other and the hesitations of the past century have been deleted from the bilateral ties. The novel initiative on critical and emerging technologies and the cooperation in critical minerals could not have been possible without trust between the two leaders. The single most important manifestation of mutual trust is evident with the two countries exploring new territories of technology partnership, with the continuing easing of regulations to expedite the process. The GE Halmau to manufacture F4 1498 knots thrust engines in India with 100% transfer of technology could not have been possible if the leadership of the two countries was not committed to transforming ties between the two countries. The US has not transferred aircraft engine technology to even its closest NATO ally. What to talk to a country like India, which professes strategic autonomy? The rapidly expanding defense partnership between the two countries is also a symbol of trust and will get further cemented when the US top-of-the-line MQ-9B high-altitude long-endurance, HALE, armed drones will be assembled in India, and the high-tech platform may carry Indian-made ammunition in future. Fact is that PM Modi has invested a lot into expanding bilateral ties over the years, after first convincing his own advisors on why a close relationship with the US is in the national interest. The decision to take the bilateral ties to the next level was taken after much debate within the core of the Modi government, as the Indian bureaucracy was weaned on the diet and a narrative that the US cannot be trusted and will let India down at the first opportunity. Today, both India and the US are on the same page on the Indo-Pacific and are not afraid to confront the challenges in the South China Sea, as well as being opposed to unilateral changes of status quo by any nation. While President Biden named Russia for the Ukraine war, PM Modi made it very clear that he was on the side of peace and was opposed to war. The two leaders discussed cross-border terrorism in the context of AFPAC region, as well as religious radicalization, with both countries on the same page on eradicating those who were responsible for 9/11 and 26/11s. Both India and the US are committed to tackling climate change and want to expand bilateral trade to another level. The India-US ties have moved to the next dimension and there is no looking back. Is on the same page on eradicating those who were responsible for 9/11 and 26/11s. Both India and the US are committed to tackling climate change and want to expand bilateral trade to another level. The India-US ties have moved to the next dimension and there is no looking back. And there is no looking back.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Opposition Patna meet live updates. Karj gives Win Bihar, Win Country mantra. Opposition meeting in Patna. The stage is set for the opposition leaders to get into a huddle in Patna to chalk out the strategy for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar is hosting the crucial meeting, in which most of the non-BJP parties, regional and national, are taking part as they plan to take on the Bharatiya Janata Party in the next year's general election. The meeting will start at 11:30 am at the Chief Minister's official residence in Bihar's capital.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
11:30 am at the Chief Minister's official residence in Bihar's capital. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge, Party Leader Rahul Gandhi, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, Delhi CM and AAP convener Arvind Kejriwal, Jharkhand CM Hemant Soren, Samajwadi Party Supremo Akhilesh Yadav, Maharashtra's former Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray and NCP President Sharad Pawar are among the leaders expected to attend the first high-level opposition meeting. Odisha Chief Minister Navin Patnaik, his Telangana counterpart K. Chandrasekhar Rao, and BSP Supremo Mayawati will be conspicuous by their absence during the meeting. While Patnaik and KCR decided to give it a miss, Mayawati wasn't invited to the meeting. JD, U. Chief spokesperson KC Tyagi said we have invited those parties that are willing to fight against the BJP in 2024. June 23, 2023, 11:21 a.m. IST. Karj win Bihar, win country mantra to Congress workers in Patna. If we win Bihar, then we can win across the country, says.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Karj win Bihar, win country mantra to Congress workers in Patna. If we win Bihar, then we can win across the country, says Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge to party workers in Bihar's Patna. June 23, 2023, 11:17 a.m. IST. We'll defeat BJP in 2024 Lok Sabha polls as we did in Karnataka, Rahul. Rahul Gandhi said that Congress is getting huge support across the country, asserting that the party will defeat BJP in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections as it defeated in recently concluded Karnataka polls. June 23, 2023, 11:12 a.m. IST. Congress's DNA is Bihar's DNA, Rahul Gandhi ahead of opposition meet. There is a battle of ideology going on in India. On one side is Congress's Bharat Jodo Yatra, on the other side is BJP RSS Bharat Todo Yatra. We have come here because the Congress party's DNA is in Bihar, said Rahul Gandhi. June 23, 2023, 11:04 a.m. IST. Rahul Gandhi, Kharge address Congress workers in Patna. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and party leader Rahul Gandhi are addressing the party workers in Bihar's Patna. Both the leaders are in the city to attend the opposition leaders' meeting. June 23, 2023, 10:50 a.m. IST. Sharad Pawar, Sitaram Yechuri arrive in Patna. NCP President Sharad Pawar and CPI-M, General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri have arrived in Patna. June 23, 2023, 10:43 a.m. IST. Congress workers gather outside party office to welcome Rahul Gandhi. General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri have arrived in Patna. June 23, 2023, 10:43 a.m. IST. Congress workers gather outside party office to welcome Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Self-control in politics is a boring virtue and an absolutely necessary one. Ian Shugart, a former clerk of the Privy Council and secretary to the cabinet, was appointed to the Senate last fall after a career of nearly 40 years in government, including 30 years in the public service. On Tuesday afternoon, having battled health challenges over the past several months, he belatedly rose in the upper chamber to deliver his maiden speech as a senator. As his topic, he chose restraint. Last week in this place, many honorable senators spoke about the risks to democracy in our country.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Many honorable senators spoke about the risks to democracy in our country. Today, I would like to add what I hope might be a useful contribution to those observations, Shugart said. I am going to speak about the idea of restraint, an idea, a discipline, that has proven essential in our constitutional and institutional development. Restraint isn't very exciting. That's sort of the point. And on any given day in Parliament, it might not seem to be much in evidence. But it is also, quietly, one of the forces that holds a democracy and a country together. Restraint self-imposed or forced on politicians by voters is often what allows political systems to continue functioning. Although Shugart said he hasn't read it, his appeal to restraint will be familiar to readers of How Democracies Die, a brilliant and worrisome book released in 2018. Authors Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt celebrate the virtue of forbearance, the idea that politicians should exercise restraint in deploying their institutional prerogatives. Without forbearance, checks and balances give way to deadlock and dysfunction, say Levitsky and Zablat, both professors of political science at Harvard. Speaking to his fellow senators, Shugart cited 3 examples of restraint profiles in forbearance. He noted how then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau chose to negotiate constitutional reforms with the provinces and compromise to complete a deal despite the fact that he had the legal power to proceed unilaterally. Colleagues, I have to ask if either of the main party leaders today would practice that restraint, Shugart said. Second, Shugart pointed to Ontario Premier Doug Ford's decision to repeal his government's use of the notwithstanding clause to pass back-to-work legislation, a reversal motivated by a ferocious public and political outcry. Lastly, Shugart encouraged his colleagues in the upper chamber to resist, or continue resisting, any urge they might have to block legislation sent to them by the House of Commons. The newly independent Senate has mostly disciplined itself to date. While it is now amending legislation more often than it used to, it has not yet refused to pass legislation or insisted that the House bow to its demands for changes. How it might interact with a different government remains an open question. But Senator Peter Harder made a similar argument in 2018 when he suggested the Senate should be very reluctant to stand in the way of legislation passed by the House, in part because someday, in the face of truly egregious and anti-democratic legislation, an independent and respected Senate might be a valuable safeguard. Shugart's comments about the Senate attracted the most attention this week, but the value of restraint extends far beyond the upper chamber. Levitsky and Zablat were focused on the American political system, a system that is, by its design, much more susceptible to deadlock and dysfunction. But no system is impervious to institutional excess. A government, especially one with a majority in the House, could go to extreme lengths without actually breaking any laws. It could use closure to ram legislation through the House with a modicum of debate, or prorogue Parliament for long periods of time. It could pass unconstitutional laws and then use the notwithstanding clause to override the courts. A determined opposition, particularly when the governing party doesn't have a majority, can also do a lot to slow down or block a government's agenda. And one party or government's drastic measures can ultimately lead another one to follow suit, or even up the ante. But Shugart also has in mind questions of public policy and the agendas that governments implement. I'm not saying that governments should just be pablum and that they should not act on principle. Far from it, Shugart said in an interview this week after his speech. He suggested that governments might ask themselves a question before acting: will this be consensus building in this country, or is it going to deepen division? Restraint goes hand in hand with tolerance. In theory, public opinion should limit what politicians are willing to do, or able to get away with. Ford's retreat on the notwithstanding clause is a good example of that, especially if the backlash causes Ford, or other premiers, to hesitate before going so far in the future. But the American experience suggests that partisanship and polarization can make a sufficient number of voters willing to accept almost anything. Levitsky and Zablat link forbearance with mutual toleration, the understanding that competing parties accept one another as legitimate rivals. After surveying the partisan rhetoric that preceded and then dominated Barack Obama's time as president, they concluded that rising partisan intolerance thus led to an erosion of institutional forbearance. Shugart's concerns also extend beyond institutional and policy matters and into the national discourse and the risk that more and more voters will retreat into partisan echo chambers. We've got to find, again, how it is that we dialogue with each other, he said. In this way, restraint in word might be just as important as restraint in deed. While the problems in Canadian politics may seem minor compared to what How Democracies Die describes, Canada is hardly immune to extreme rhetoric or to politicians, encouraged by the destructive incentives of social media, who seem to feel relatively unrestrained in what they can say about their opponents. Shugart said he worries that a lack of real dialogue will diminish trust in governments and make it increasingly hard to act on the problems that confront the country. But if parties and their supporters begin to view their counterparts as enemies, it also becomes much harder to hold a democracy together and much easier to justify anti-democratic or destructive behavior. Honorable Senators, whether it is what we say to or about each other, or how we learn again to listen and dialogue with others who don't share our outlook, or how we guard the health of our institutions. We need to relearn the virtue of restraint, Shugart said Tuesday, wrapping up a speech that clocked in at a relatively restrained 10 minutes. Canada is a big, diverse country geographically, socially, culturally, economically, and philosophically. For each of us, for parties and for institutions, restraint may begin with acknowledging that our point of view, legitimate as it is not the only point of view. We have benefited from restraint in this country and, in these times, we need it again. May we all find it within ourselves to practice restraint. Politics in a democracy is often full of passionate intensity and for very good reasons. But Shugart's message is a vital one. In the midst of so much intensity, we need forbearance to hold things together. Or how we guard the health of our institutions. We need to relearn the virtue of restraint, Shugart said Tuesday, wrapping up a speech that clocked in at a relatively restrained 10 minutes. Canada is a big, diverse country geographically, socially, culturally, economically, and philosophically. For each of us, for parties and for institutions, restraint may begin with acknowledging that our point of view, legitimate as it is not the only point of view. We have benefited from restraint in this country and, in these times, we need it again. May we all find it within ourselves to practice restraint. Politics in a democracy is often full of passionate intensity and for very good reasons. But Shugart's message is a vital one. In the midst of so much intensity, we need forbearance to hold things together. In the midst of so much intensity, we need forbearance to hold things together.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Shah dismisses opposition meet as photo session, says Modi will become PM again. Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Friday dismissed the meeting of Non-Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, parties in Patna for unity ahead of the 2024 national polls as a photo session and said Narendra Modi will become the Prime Minister for a third time despite their best efforts. He said the BJP will get over 300 of 543 seats in Lok Sabha while laughing off attempts for unity to defeat BJP. Today, a photo session is going on in Patna. Leaders of the opposition parties have assembled. They want to convey the message that they would challenge the BJP, NDA National Democratic Alliance, and Modi.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
That they would challenge the BJP, NDA National Democratic Alliance, and Modi. Despite their attempts, unity among them is not possible. And even if they forge unity and go to the people, Modi with over 300 seats will again become the Prime Minister, he said at a rally in Jammu. The rally coincided with the gathering of around half a dozen chief ministers and leaders of 18 parties in Patna for unity efforts ahead of the 2024 polls. Shah said Modi has been in the United States for 3 days and Washington has given him the state guest honor. This has never happened and would never happen again. So many agreements are taking place in the fields of space, defense, and semiconductors. Many companies are keen to invest in India. From the 11th largest economy in the world a decade ago to the 5th in 9 years is all due to Modi's efforts. Shah slammed Congress leader Rahul Gandhi.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
In the world a decade ago to the 5th in 9 years is all due to Modi's efforts. Shah slammed Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, who is in Patna for the opposition party's meeting, saying he is opposed to everything. Be it nullification of Constitution's Article 370 that stripped Jammu and Kashmir of semi-autonomous status in 2019, Ram Temple in Ayodhya, criminalization of triple talaq for instant divorce among a section of Muslims. By doing so, Gandhi has developed a tendency to oppose everything, said Shah. Shah paid tributes to Syamaprasad Mukherjee, the founder of BJP's precursor Bharatiya Janata Sangh, who led a campaign against Article 370 and died under detention in Jammu and Kashmir, J&K, in 1953. He said Mukherjee resigned as Union Minister when Article 370 was introduced and rushed to J&K to protest and was arrested and murdered. Today is his martyrdom day, and his soul will be in peace because, on August 5, 2019, Modi revoked Article 370, said Shah. Shah listed the achievements of the BJP-led government over the last 9 years, drawing parallels with that of the previous Congress-led United Progressive Alliance, UPA, administration. On one hand, there were scams of 12 Indian rupees lakh crore during the UPA rule, not a single allegation of corruption against the Modi government over 9 years. Modi initiated a campaign against corruption. He ensured facilities for 600 million poor for which they waited for 70 years. Shah slammed the Abdullah, Mufti and Gandhi families for J&K's problems. Under Modi, a new J&K has emerged. The same J&K was ruled by 3 families and Article 370 hindered development. 42,000 people were killed in terrorism. They said Article 370 should be kept intact, he said. I want to ask Abdullahs and Muftis who is responsible for the killings. Under Modi, terrorism has now been contained. He said former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti, who is among those attending the Patna meeting, says terrorism has not been contained every time a terror incident takes place. I want to tell Mufti and the Abdullahs that in 10 years of UPA rule, 7327 terror incidents took place compared to 2,350 over 9 years of the BJP rule, down by 70%. He added 2056 people were killed when UPA was in power. Only 377 have been killed in 9 years of the BJP, which also is not acceptable to us. Following the revocation of Article 370, there were only 32 bond calls in 47 months, incidents of stone throwing are down by 90%. These figures tell that the situation has improved. Shah said a record 18.8 million tourists visited J&K last year. 28,400 Indian rupees crore industrial package, G20 summit in Kashmir, 9 new medical colleges, 15 nursing colleges, the addition of 600 more medical seats, IIT Indian Institute of Technology and IIM Indian Institute of Management, speaks about BJP government's resolve to put J&K on the path of progress. Tourists visited J&K last year. 28,400 Indian rupees crore industrial package, G20 summit in Kashmir, 9 new medical colleges, 15 nursing colleges, the addition of 600 more medical seats, IIT Indian Institute of Technology and IIM Indian Institute of Management, speaks about BJP government's resolve to put J&K on the path of progress.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Turn your phone off every night for 5 minutes, Australian PM tells residents. Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has told residents they should turn their smartphones off and on again once a day as a cybersecurity measure, and tech experts agree. Albanese said the country needed to be proactive to thwart cyber risks, as he announced the appointment of Australia's inaugural National Cybersecurity Coordinator. We need to mobilise the private sector, we need to mobilise, as well, consumers, the Prime Minister said on Friday. We all have a responsibility. Simple things, turn your phone off every night for 5 minutes.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Simple things, turn your phone off every night for 5 minutes. For people watching this, do that every 24 hours, do it while you're brushing your teeth or whatever you're doing. The Australian government's advice is not new. In 2020, the United States National Security Agency issued best practice guidelines for mobile device security, which included rebooting smartphones once a week to prevent hacking. While a reboot every day may seem a basic measure, experts believe it can help, in some instances. Dr. Priyadarshi Nanda is a senior lecturer at the University of Technology Sydney who specialises in cybersecurity development. He said rebooting a phone regularly could minimize risk because it forcibly closes any applications and processes running in the background that could maliciously be monitoring users or collecting data. Nanda said many users don't realize their apps are often running in the background. Given how much we use smartphones in our lives, we know of cases where people haven't turned their phones off in an entire year, Nanda said, noting people who rely on their phone's alarm clock, for example, may need it on 24 hours a day. Nanda said some of the benefits of
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Nanda said, noting people who rely on their phone's alarm clock, for example, may need it on 24 hours a day. Nanda said some of the benefits of rebooting a phone could be achieved by regularly closing apps that might be running in the background. But there could be other malicious processes running on a compromised device that will only be stopped by turning the phone off. If there's a process running from the adversarial side, turning off the phone breaks the chain, even if it's only for the time the phone is off. It certainly frustrates the potential hacker. It may not fully protect you, but rebooting can make things more difficult for hackers, Nanda said. Experts, while backing the advice of a regular reboot, have previously flagged the strategy is unlikely to stop determined hackers targeting a specific individual, especially in light of the proliferation of sophisticated technologies used to hack world leaders revealed in recent years. Dr. Arash Shagagi, a senior lecturer in cybersecurity at the University of New South Wales, said daily rebooting was a good first step to encourage users to adopt good cyber hygiene because disconnecting can minimize certain risks. However, Shagagi warned against a false sense of security. If your password is stolen and you disconnect your phone, you are not protected, and your account is still at risk. If attackers target a device, a temporary disconnect may be only an inconvenience for attackers, he said. Some components of phones can remain active even if turned off. Shagagi said that with so-called zero-click exploits, sophisticated attacks that don't require an action from a user to give an adversary access, rebooting a smartphone may challenge the attackers as they may need to find alternative means to exploit the device once powered back on. Rebooting your device regularly helps when your device is not compromised with persistent malware, as can turning on airplane mode. Shagagi said smartphones can compromise privacy via apps that maliciously track location and listen to conversations. Being cautious of the applications users install and the permissions they grant is another important cyber safety step, he said. Shagagi said smartphones can compromise privacy via apps that maliciously track location and listen to conversations. Being cautious of the applications users install and the permissions they grant is another important cyber safety step, he said.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.